and what an amazing audience and venue. So thank you so much for the time today. I know it's going to be a great set of discussions. And before we get into it, I am actually going to, having seen you follow directions, ask you to stand one more time. Genpact, that includes you. All right. We're going to talk a lot about technology, but visibly level set where we all really are on generative AI. So let me just ask a few questions and prompt you to do a few things. First of all, if anyone in this room has not read about, talked about, heard about generative AI in the last week, and this includes from your children, please sit down. Okay, as expected, pervasive. Second, if any of you are concerned about your data infrastructure, management, quality, preparedness to support not only AI transformation now, but generative AI, if you're concerned, please sit down. A few people sitting, I see some Genpact people sitting down. Okay. All right, now let's think about skills. If you feel like you don't have all the sufficient skills, both the technical skills, prompt engineers, fine-tuning experts, and also the operating model with your business partners in order to develop generative AI use cases, please sit down. So if any concerns about skills. Okay, we're getting a little closer to reality here. How about stay standing if you have any generative AI use case in production in your enterprise today? Okay, everyone look around the room because these are the people you should talk to later. And I see some hand movements up. This is an unauthorized award to all of you for being heroes in generative AI, and I expect we'll be tapping you for learnings later. Okay, everyone can sit down now. Wonderful. So in the introduction, you heard the word fire. And I'm not going to say generative AI has spread like wildfire. That would be too cliche. But I am going to say, when I think about the technological advancement more than 2 million years ago for humans, for Homo sapiens at the time, and our society when fire was discovered. We learned how to have light, we learned how to have heat, it helped ward us and protect us, and maybe, most importantly, it taught us how to cook things, which changed how we consumed food, it changed our caloric intake, and it allowed and afforded us time and energy, most importantly, to be more creative, to focus on developing and building. It was a pivotal moment in how the human anatomy has changed, how our brains developed, many researchers have said, and how society has continued to evolve since then. And it was pervasive. So what does that have to do with generative AI? It's not that this technology hasn't been evolving over years. We'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't think that. It's the pervasiveness of how it's changing society and igniting conversations among our children, their schools, our colleagues, our boards. And it's causing us all to wake up and put AI at the center of our conversations. And I think this is one of those tipping moments. I mean, how can we deny it? In 2 months, there were 100 million users of ChatGPT. This is a pivotal moment for us as an industry and for you as leaders in the room. So I equate what happened with society with fire to what happens now with generative AI and AI at scale in the enterprise. But with fire, we always have to be careful not to get burned. And so some of the things I'll talk about today are really some of the learnings we've had as Genpact as we've been on this journey ourselves and helping our clients and our own use cases move towards production. You've all read the research. I don't have to parrot back statistics at you. Some, like McKinsey, are talking about economic creation. Others are talking about acceleration and speed, software development cycles going 2 times as fast. Others are talking about hyper-collaboration. Everyone will have a co-pilot or an agent that's assisting them. It'll help us make decisions faster, collaborate more together. But the one message I want to leave you with is I am very concerned about the narrative and the hyper-focus on productivity. Don't get me wrong, productivity is part of what this tool can deliver to us, but the hyper-focus on productivity is creating a narrative about job loss, whereas I think this is actually about potential creation. So what does that mean? How do our clients at Genpact think about this? I wanted to share just a little story, and what I'm going to share is a little bit futuristic because it's a journey that we're on with one of the largest digital platforms. And what I'm going to share as the story isn't where we are today, but it's where we hope to go to with the use of AI. And it's not generative AI alone. For one of the largest digital platforms, for years, we've supported them with small, medium business ad sales. What does that really mean? We have people, sales development reps, who place phone calls, cold calls to small businesses and try and place ads. Basic business, very much focused on productivity. What we're developing with this client now is, imagine the following scenario. Put your head in the mind of a small florist here in New York City. Thanksgiving has just passed by. Your sales weren't that strong. And you're wondering what'll happen over the holiday seasons, your strongest season usually. And you're wondering, should you amp up your ad? Should you spend more money? Will you get the return? Later that day, you get a chat on your phone and you look at it and you correspond with this chat. It asks you some questions around how you're preparing for the holiday seasons. You respond. Just imagine some narrative with your phone through a chat that's coming from your ad platform. The next day, a sales rep comes in. The algorithm, machine learning, has served up a queue of the targeted accounts to call in sequence, and the florist is at the top of them. There's information that's been scraped and added to information we knew on that florist around when they've placed ads in the past, when we think they'll get a higher return. And a narrative is created on the fly as they call this florist. And a few minutes later, they happily transact to move ads to Wednesday, get more productivity, a higher return. In a virtual world, this is turning the way that this would have happened on its head. It's now an AI-led process. And generative AI is one of the tools to bring that to fruition, along with machine learning and other tools. But it's thinking very differently about the process through the operator's headset and delivering outcomes of higher growth, more retention, and better customer service or CSAT. And that's what I mean by if we just focus on productivity, we would have come to a very different outcome together. Instead, we've turned the equation upside down and really pushed to the boundaries of what more could we deliver through this technology. But if there's one message that for you as practitioners in the room I want to leave, is research shows that 1/3 of Fortune 1000 companies in the next 2 years, because of the emphasis now on AI, will expect more than the current terms of their contracts. They will expect more value be created. And AI, data, and analytics are at the center of how those services will be performed. And so you'll be a key stakeholder at the table. It means, though, that you, like me today, have to take center stage. We've seen many, many programs and AI and initiatives fall to the wayside and challenges around, did we get the return on that investment? This is the time, I think, for leaders like yourselves in this room or like our team to stand up and really rethink how we change the operating model to implement AI in the enterprise. And because of all of the focus from boards, customers, our partners at the CXO table, I think this is the moment for us to do that. But it's hard work. We all know that if the frameworks that have governed us in the past, the compliance frameworks, the data security frameworks, these will crush our ability to really move forward at speed. I mean, today, what research says is 75% of companies are still in the first act of this. What does the first act mean? It means a lot of our employees are maybe accessing Copilot. They're running around discovering, inventing, and that's wonderful. But there isn't governance to understand how to measure what the returns will be. In many ways, it's scattered, and so the potential is actually diffuse. And I think it's incumbent on the leaders in this room to pull their stakeholders together to align on where to prioritize, where to focus, and now how to chip away at all the things that get in our way. So for a chief technologist, if your concerns from legal and compliance are, what about permission? What if we're accessing and using code we don't have permission to do? Well, how do we use watermarks? Or if we're worried about vulnerabilities, how do we work with those teams to put the right querying in place to understand whether vulnerabilities are being created? And so I would say center stage is the message for us at this moment. So all of you are technologists. I'm not going to tell you what to do on the technology side. You have that covered. But I think there are 3 big rocks that we really need to wrestle in this moment if we want to get out of the first act to the second act of what is a multi-act movie. And if we want to be first movers in this space. And those 3 things are the where, the who, and the how with respect to responsibility. So the where, as a chief strategy officer, focus is everything that I wake up to do. And what I see in our clients, even in Genpact, was this has been, yet again, 1,000 flowers have bloomed overnight. 100 million people have accessed technology, and it has birthed creativity in a way that is powerful. And yet we all know that if we can't harness in on where we focus, again, we can't mobilize an organization, a cross-functional organization around this. So let me just tell you how Genpact's thinking about this. We have 3 prongs to our strategy. It's offense, it's defense, and it's eat your own dog food. So on offense, the way we're thinking about this is this opens up huge potential for us to compete in adjacencies where we never had the scale to compete before. That could be software engineering. That could be customer experience. That could be digital marketing. And we are channelizing energy into thinking about how we disrupt and be the disruptors to oftentimes dinosaurs that may be sitting next to your own organizations. It's harder to destroy your own revenue than it is to come in as a non-incumbent and think very differently with an AI-led proposition. Second, we're thinking about our own core business and how not just bring generative AI, but how do we use this as a catalyst to really drive end-to-end thinking and digitization with AI as a hero of that, to get to, as I said, new outcomes beyond productivity. And lastly, if you're not doing this to yourself, you're behind. Use cases within your own walls are the easiest to implement this upon, and so we are rapidly developing use cases within our own walls in order to take to our clients. The who. So many of you will remember when culture eats strategy for breakfast. As a chief strategy officer, that was a hard time when that came out, but it's very true, and I've watched it play out over the last 10 years plus, which is what's really important is change management in any transformation or journey. And what does that mean? It means, what does it mean for me? And in this time, as I said, with this focus on job destruction, productivity, this is a bigger challenge even than before. And so I think it's incumbent on the leaders in this room to think about how do we think about skilling and awareness. Furthermore, when I listen to my employees talk about what generative AI will do, there's a little bit of a misguided rocket firing off. So how do we actually channelize the energy in the right direction as opposed to, again, diffuse in many directions, which are fun use cases, but not well applied? At Genpact, the way we're thinking about this is in a couple prongs. First, organizations have to have data literacy. We started that journey 3 years ago. 70,000 of our 120,000 colleagues now have been trained in contextual data literacy so that they can look at data that they're processing in transactions and understand what is the exhaust, what are the insights they can derive. That became a pivotal platform to set us up for what is now the AI journey. Second, what we've done is we've started to train AI literacy, again, so that everyone accessing these tools can understand the potential, understand the tools available to them, and really what are the selective right use cases. So over the last 2 months, we've trained 20,000 of our colleagues, and we hope to at least double that by the end of the year. And I only use these numbers to talk about the speed that organizations need to move at. A couple hundred people in your technology organization won't be the power you need to fuel this innovation. This is really around technologists coming together with people who are operators, who understand how the work gets done, to rethink it. Third, we've taken our Genome platform, which is where we put all of our learnings from projects, and we're using AI Guru in order to allow our colleagues in a much more conversational way to access that in their jobs on the fly. And these are just a few examples, but I would really urge you, I'm not sure where each of you are on your skilling platforms and skilling programs, if it's just about getting some more prompt engineers, some more tuning experts, I think you're missing that a lot of people in your organization really are data discoverers. And that's my cliche term to say people who can help define these prompts because they understand what one needs to discover and they understand how to do that most effectively. Third big rock is responsibility, and this isn't it's not a new topic. We've written a lot about bias in models, but this is one we have to take even more seriously because without guardrails, again, the pervasiveness of this technology, it's no longer something happening in a COE. So we have to think differently about how we prepare our colleagues to be responsible. And we all know that what we're thinking about is responsibility around IP. It's evolving quickly, responsibility around data security, models, and maybe most importantly for each of you as representatives of large companies is the responsibility to make sure that the models are in accordance with your values. And in society, there's never been a bigger time for that than now, to make sure that the bias inherently is not in the models and that we're thinking responsibly as companies so that we're representing ourselves for our end customers or our business customers that way. So at Genpact, we have our responsibility framework. We think it has to have a strategy. It's time to refresh these strategies. It's not a new topic, but it's new approaches. Regulations are new. They'll be pervasive soon. So how do we localize that knowledge? Third, we really think that it's time for us to think independently about audits of models. We have clients coming to us now, and we're developing services to do that because we have to treat this with a type of rigor that we haven't seen before. And lastly, obviously, pushing that through the system, systematizing it through checklists and other operational mechanisms. So with all that, I was talking to a few people in the room earlier, and I am extremely bullish as someone who spends a lot of time looking at technology and AI with respect to how could this moment be different. What I've seen in the last 10 years of working around this topic is that we've done phenomenally with a number of point solutions. We've taken our core processes, the guts of our organizations, and we've embedded optimization, forecasting, a number of tools that can help predict and drive next best action. And that's wonderful, and that's a lot of the use cases in generative AI today as well. But I think that the difference, if we go to a book by Ajay Agrawal, who's a board member of ours, he wrote a book recently called The Power in Prediction. And his central thesis, coming off of prediction machines a few years ago, was that AI hasn't reached its scale and potential because we still very much think of it as a point solution independent of the system. And I think that now we're at a moment with board level attention, with the type of dollars going into technology advancement, with leaders like yourselves and organizations that are being asked, what more can we do? How can we go faster? Is to actually push the discussion around rewiring the system and thinking end to end. Rethinking, not augmenting. This isn't about embedding some more AI into a system. This is about fundamentally, as the use case I talked about earlier, stepping back and asking ourselves, with all of the technology, how would we do it differently with the human in the loop? Not start with what does the human do and how can we make them better? How would we do it differently with the human in the loop? And that means changing your operating model. It's change management, as I talked about before. It's even shifts in power within companies. But I think this is our moment to really realize the potential of systems thinking. So lastly, so many conversations are going to happen today. It's super exciting to see you all here. What next? What are we doing? As I said before, prioritization is key. So how do you get to those use cases? How do you find the use cases that actually don't require that it be deterministic, that it be perfect today? Let's work with the maturity of the technology. How do we put guardrails around it so we have the foundational elements to make sure that what we're putting in place is making good decisions? How do we prepare our data and technology ecosystem, especially as it's so fast evolving? There isn't a day where there isn't another announcement and a new breakthrough and a new way to handle it. So how do you operate in this bimodal focus and move to production while everything is changing around you? And how do you set up a team to do that in your COE? And then lastly, I would say it's really around how do we think about the unknown unknown? And with that, I'll say, as we've worked as a team, it really is, how do we understand that what we are doing today will lead to discoveries tomorrow? It'll show us where our processes were broken. It will highlight where humans have creatively covered up, in essence, for what isn't working. And so how are we prepared as an operating model to work together with our functions and our businesses to truly rewire our organizations? And with that, I'm so proud to be here on behalf of Genpact and the work that we're doing, and I'm very excited for the conversations to follow. And thank you so much for listening to me.